The room was small. It had a table, 2 chairs, and a mirrored window. There was a door, too, but that hardly mattered. It was lit by one of those special government gem lights that only seemed to make the shadows deeper. The table had a nice tone when struck, and the hardwood floor made a deep creak when tapped against. An all-percussion band wasn't much fun, though, even with me on backup vocals. I leaned back in the chair, kicking my legs up. My stomach growled. My eyelids started gathering lead weights. More than once, I thought of dropping my hat over my face and simply slipping away. It would probably get them to come in quicker anyway. I just wondered whether the good cop or the bad cop would come in first. When the door finally swung open, it turned out that there was only one of them. She was a white mare, one who could hug you with one limb or break you with it. It was easy for her to look tough, and she knew it. Her coat was hard, sweet caramel, with a dash of salt around her cheeks. She had a pink mane that fell in front of one of her green eyes, always one or the other. In one hoof she carried a mug of steaming coffee, and a file folder in the crook of her forelegs. She wasn't young by any means, but she always looked that way to me, even with the sergeant's stripes on her uniform. "Well, hey, Babs. It's been a while." I smiled at her. She didn't return it. "Evening, Cuds. Let's have a talk, huh?" She sat down, setting the file off to her side. "Let's. You still seeing that coat from the docks? What's his name? Girder something?" "No. We broke up a couple months ago." "Good work, gal. He was all wrong for you anyway." "Thanks." She pushed the mug across the table. "That coffee for me? You shouldn't have." "Drink up. You're gonna need it." I took the mug in one hoof and had a swig. It tasted like a wet paper bag. Good old police swill. I've almost missed it. Babs folded her big hooves on the table. "So, how's the sergeant life been treating you?" She blinked. "It's been fine." "You know, it's always alright to show off a little. Being sergeant in 5 years is something to be proud of." Her brows lifted slightly. Then they settled back into the same stern frown. "Like I was saying, I just hope they're not riding you too hard. Any point give you lip, you make sure to bite back, you hear?" A slight smile appeared under her hard eye. "So, you keeping busy, AJ?" I sipped at the coffee. "As busy as I can." "You working a case right now?" "Yeah, it's nothing too major." "Really?" She opened the file. It was full of photographs. "Because I've got some things here that say it's major, alright." She pushed a hoofful of the photos towards me. They showed a small apartment after it had been hit by a tornado. They showed upended chairs, discarded drawers, and clothing littering the floor. Papers scattered like stars in the sky. A life in disarray. I looked back up at Babs. I kept my expression even. "The landlady of the tenement over on Brookmere Lane says you showed up there earlier today." She tapped a hoof on the overturned bed in one of the pictures. "That you told her to open the door on this mess." "I might have suggested it." She slid another picture across the table. "There were scratches around the keyhole. You carrying any lockpicks?" "You boys search me. Am I?" She let that one slide, but not without a frown. Did you take anything from the apartment? I shook my head. Nah, I did not. Did you go into the apartment alone at all? Shouldn't that one have come first? Answer the question. I shrugged. I took a step inside, yeah. But do you touch anything? I know better than to disturb a crime scene. I left it just as I found it. So you really didn't take anything from there? That's the honest truth. She leaned back, resting an elbow on the back of her chair. She pursed her lips and blew her mane out of her face. Alright, then let's talk about the Princess Street. It's a wide road on the east side with way too many red lights and not enough cops. True. So, what were you doing there, AJ? Who says I was? Her head lolled back, and she looked at me down her nose. We've got a bunch of eyewitnesses who say they saw a firefight there this afternoon. Some point let off a few rounds inside a carriage. Enchanted rounds. Incendiaries. The kind that'll char you black from inside out if they hit you. That's some ugly business there. You're saying I fired those rounds? Did you? I looked at her square in the eye. No. She blew on her mane again. Well, the witnesses also claim to have seen a pony in a coat and hat running from the carriage just as the shooting started. That could have been any pony. She smirked. It was a look she had had years of practice with. And there it is. Your face always scrunches up when you're lying, AJ. I returned the smirk. Good to know I'm still an open book. So, let's read the story together. Huh? What were you doing there? Working? On what? My case. She swept her free hoof wide. Any details on that? Nothing that I need to share with MPD. Things like acting as a courier from Broken Spoke. I felt my breathing pause. Just for a moment. I decided to hold it a little bit longer. Miss Rosetta Stone said she ran to you in the Golden Carrot. You were poking into some pony's cubicle. A Mrs. Sugarbeets, was it? This time, it was my turn to sit back in my chair. I folded my hooves in front of me for good measures. Queer to explain what that was about, said Babs. Business? What kind of business? My kind. She nodded. She tilted her head back in fake thought. What I don't get is how you go from a hole-in-the-wall counting house to a shootout in the street. I grinned. Even I'm not sure how that happened. Well, you must have been pumping into some pony who didn't want to be bumped. Is that about right? Can't say. Was some pony casing the joint, maybe? You blocked the view or something? Keep guessing. What's so important about the sugar beets? I blinked, a curious expression settling onto my face. What does it matter, y'all? Babs went quiet. Her eyes flicked to the window. Once. So, you gonna share any of this with me, or not? No. Back it up. Y'all pretty darn interested in this mirror, aren't ya? I leaned forward, putting my forelegs on the table and staring her in the face. good and close. Now it's starting to make sense. Why y'all giving me third degree? Why they sent you in? Some pony's been tracking the sugar beets for a while, and they're desperate for info. You can think of it like that. Who made the call to put you in here? How high does this go, Babs? She shook her head once and quick. I can't answer that. Can't or won't? Can't. Same as you can't name your clients. No, it's not the same. Then let's be open and honest, AJ. Let's lay it out on the table. She spread her hooves wide. You said it yourself. There's a reason I'm in here. Let's be cousins and help each other out. No. Why not? I snapped the hoof against the table. Because until you guys own yourselves, you don't own me. Until you can be trusted all the time to look for the truth and find it and let the chips lay where they may, until I can trust you, I've got a right to listen to my conscience and protect my client as best as I can. Until I'm sure you won't do him any harm and you'll do the truth good. Babs slumped back into her chair. Her ears drooped like a scolded kitten. You really think of me that way, AJ? Her voice was tiny and quiet. I locked gazes with her. I hoped my eyes looked soft. I think the world of you, Babs. Turning to the window, I said, that wasn't meant for you. I took the mug again and drained the last dregs of coffee. Thank you kindly. I pushed off from the table, sliding the seat back with a squeal of wood. The door was unlocked and opened with the same noise. I stood there for a moment. Hey, I said. She spun to face me. Yeah, AJ? Next time, don't let him push you around, Babs. Have him send in the bad cop. I straightened my hat and walked out. No pony in the 10th precinct ever slept. Inside its white stone walls and behind its heavy brown doors, there were always cops doing something. There were cops wandering the halls, cops sitting at the desks, young cops chatting together and doing their best to look like it was still work. Old cops with mugs full of coffee and eyes that said it still wasn't enough. Cops with ink-stained hooves putting the last of the day's paperwork to bed. Cops clocking in for the night shift. Cops escorting surly private detectives out into the main lobby, saying, "Thank you, miss. Have a good evening." I checked out with the watch lieutenant and was a free mare again. He didn't recognize me. Seemed like no pony did. Maybe if I stood near the photos on the wall for long enough, they'll make the connection. There were lots of photos on the wall. A lot of bright new faces. A lot of bright new commendations. Detectives, lieutenants, a few patrol boys here and there. All of them standing tall for the camera. I looked along the rows and back through the years. One of them showed a Pegasus stallion and an Earth Pony mare. He had a captain's bars on his uniform, which was as crisp as it could be without being dangerous. And he held up a shining brass placard to the camera. His eyes squinted tightly above his wide grin. The mare also looked sharp. Of that there would be no doubt. Her cap was held under one foreleg, and she stood at perfect attention, looking into the camera with her mouth drawn so straight she might have been choking on the professionalism. Her eyes looked hard, framed by her solidly colored locks. But if you knew to look, you could see the joy in them. It was her freckles. They crinkled a bit near the corners of her eyes. She had a lot to be happy about back then. I spun away from the wall, made my way out through the heavy wood doors. I stood there, wasting a few moments listening to the rattle of carts on the street and hooves on the sidewalk. My watch told me I was up too late, that it was making my head go places it didn't need to. Home was close. It was time to get there. I had made it maybe a dozen steps when the door to the precinct bank opened again. I turned to look. 3 ponies were hurrying out of the building. 2 were patrol cops. The other was a detective. He was the color of brick and cobblestone, his mane hanging across his neck like rust on a gutter. His coat and hat might as well have been part of his own skin. He moved with the stride of a marathon runner, and his face was set in a frown that could light a fire or freeze a criminal solid. I knew him. More than that, I knew what that look of his meant. One of his uniforms hitched themselves into the patrol wagon while the detective hopped in back with the other. Then they sped away into the dark. They were headed east, probably to somewhere on the far side of town, where none of my business was going on. Or maybe they were headed east towards 56 13th Street, close to Harmony Square. Darn it, there I was again, getting notions in my head again. One of these days, I had better learn. I hailed a cab, gave the driver the address, and told him to sprint.